I have a tweet. And y'all have been lighting up the chat about it. I said there's a 9mm bullet lodged in my kitchen now. I can't say I'm surprised this happened after the wave of doxing and threats made against us. I can't reveal too much of the details about what happened, but this morning I got word that my house had been, I don't know what the right word is. Burglarized is the legal term, but people typically think burglary implies theft of goods. There was no theft. There was reportedly two men who broke in, climbed through a window. One of our staff members on site yelled out. Let me just say very carefully, a shot was fired. The individuals were nearly struck. They fled. They left behind a wallet and an ID, which is very, very strange. Nothing appears to have been missing, and we don't know what this was about. Okay, entirely possible that this was a random occurrence. Considering we've been swatted so many times, considering we have active threats, and the far left has been posting, let's just say posting an address that they believe is my house, it's not, on the internet excessively, the first thing we thought was, seems like it may be random or localized. And then after going over the scenario, talking with some individual security, for instance, we were like, okay, actually, it seems like this might actually be political, because the things we would expect from a burglary, a typical burglary in the area, didn't happen. The property in question is large with multiple buildings on it. And without giving too many details away, we ultimately concluded that your typical robbery wouldn't occur in a situation like this. I don't know exactly what happened. We just know that it did. That's what's been reported by, well, we have the police report that was filed. The police took evidence. And the reason why I want to bring this up is that I talked about this last week. We've been swatted several times, and we've not reported it. Everybody knows that we've been swatted over a dozen times with the bomb squad here and everything like that. And we keep being told by people, don't say anything. Don't let anybody know what's happening. And the first time I heard that, I'm like, it's kind of odd. Like, shouldn't we let people know that there are people trying to murder us? Because then, like, I don't know, it just feels like if something happens, no one will be prepared for it. We should be like, hey, guys, these threats are real. They're happening. And what we kept being told was, if you say it, it will keep happening. And I'm like, okay, you know what? I agree. It's a tired narrative. So we actually stopped mentioning that the swattings were happening. Guess what? They still keep happening. Guess what? After all the death threats and threats against us, I don't blame Elon Musk. You know, I was thinking about reaching out to him, being like, dude, there are people posting addresses for me, Matt Walsh, and a variety of people, and they are spamming them en masse like crazy. There's got to be some way of getting rid of this. But I'm like, what do you really do? How do you really deal with this? So now my attitude is basically this. The left came out, and we'll talk about the story in a second, and said that a transformer substation was shot up by far right-wingers trying to shut down a drag performance. Every single time something happens, Jussie Smollett 2.0, they claim the far right. Last week, one of our guests said, if you go to the average person and ask them who's more likely to commit political violence, a left-winger or a right-winger, they will tell you outright a right-winger, despite the fact that it's substantially more likely to come from the left, just in every capacity. I know the ADL has their weird rankings, but they claim that black nationalists are left-wing and white nationalists are right-wing, and none of that makes sense. And I think that there's a reason for it. How often does Ben Shapiro talk about the threats that he gets? Rarely, if ever. How often does your typical Antifa talk about the threats they get? They won't shut up about anything. They get a DM where someone says you're fugly, and they'll post it and say, I'm under attack, they're trying to kill me. So what happens? The narrative you start seeing in mainstream conversation is the left is constantly being threatened and the right is fine. When in reality, this stuff is happening to us. So I don't know if this incident in question was political, but I find it hard to believe it's a coincidence has happened around the time that people have been spamming, people have been posting on Twitter that we shouldn't be allowed to live comfortably. But I don't know what you guys think. What are your thoughts?
The story is a little perplexing because it sounds like I'm not gonna.
We gotta be careful.
Yeah. I'm not gonna. I know the drill. I've been through this before. This has been our entire career. This is nothing new. I mean, except the levels of intensity just keeps getting higher and higher. But I was going to say this is either a case of the wet bandits from Home Alone, or just someone messing with us. So just deliberately trying to intimidate and scare us. So I think again, who knows what's really going on here? I think a lot of the things are done to confuse people. It could be a bunch of idiots. poverty is increasing. A lot of people are poor. A lot of people are desperate. But the official story of what happened doesn't really add up to that. Doesn't really make sense. And the idiocy of it doesn't really make sense at all, especially with the identification card.
That right away.
That right there's like, okay, either they're the lowest IQ idiots of all time, the dumbest criminals of all time, or someone's deliberately trying to, send a message.
Well, remember when the planes hit the World Trade Center, a passport fell out of the burning explosion and fell down to the ground. That's how they found the terrorist that did it.
That's a good point. It may just be that this guy who broke in had a wallet with nothing but a single ID in it. And my understanding is the ID wasn't even in it when they fled. So that means he climbed in and just said, I better check my wallet for my ID, and took it out, placed it down, looked at it, and then had to flee the building.
How convenient that now we have an identification and someone to go after. How convenient.
Very weird.
I don't like this. I don't like talking about it publicly, but what I will talk about is the victim mentality, because I know what you mean about people claiming, they hurt me, they're violent towards me. But you never hear you don't hear Ben Shapiro say when he gets doxxed. You don't hear Disney say when they get doxxed, because entertainment companies get doxxed. That's what happens. That's why they have big walls around their studio. But at some point, I don't like playing the victim card. I don't like being like, I got hit today, everybody. Look how sad I am. Oh, I got hurt today, everyone. Look at me. Look at me. But at some point, it's worth being honest about what's happening, not complaining about it. It's just the nature of the entertainment industry.
There's one reason I tweeted about it when I heard, right? So I wake up in the morning and phones are going nuts because it happened at 7 a.m. Like, I wake up and I'm in bed, getting up, getting ready, and it's literally happening. I wasn't at this property in question. And I said, look, I've told people, please, for the love of all that is holy, if you hate my guts, if you don't want me to be alive, whatever, do not come to my properties. You're allowed to hate me. You can hate me all you want. But if you come to these properties, there is a strong possibility you will lose your life. No one is going to sit back and be like, well, despite all the death threats, I'm going to give this person the benefit of the doubt as they shatter the window and climb through. I don't know what they're doing, but, let's just ask them politely. That's not what any of our security guys are going to do. Mm-hmm. No, the security guys, you're lucky if you're uninjured when you leave. Those guys they're probably hurt. So that's the main reason I was like, I talked about it and said, I think I should put that out just so that I can make sure this is loud and very clear. I do not want anyone getting hurt. And if you come here, so we have people trying to troll, we have stupid games, and there's a reason why, who knows? Some morons, coming up, I have no idea. But I just, I have to wonder about, with all of this going on, the other significant portion of this story is that it's been a year since the swattings began. And we've been swatted on average more than once per month, sometimes twice. Where's law enforcement? I've tried reaching out to some. The amount of crimes that have been committed against us in terms of violent and as well as what I'd consider white collar crimes, if we could talk about it, people would crap their pants. But we can't because active investigation stuff, law enforcement. But for some reason, nothing's being done about it. I think I realized something, a scary thing. Marjorie Taylor Greene was swatted, 6 times? 6? She's a sitting member of Congress. You mean they can do nothing to protect a sitting member of Congress? Okay, well, that says everything right there. The courts and law enforcement are incapable of actually maintaining social cohesion at this point. We hear all of these stories about the summer of love, the deaths from the 30 plus people dead from Antifa, and there's zero accountability towards any of it. Sounds to me like maybe it's not civil war in the sense that people expect, as we often say, like two sides fighting. It's just a collapse of social cohesion. The FBI, the DOJ are working with big tech to benefit the Democrats. They're not going after the people protesting in front of the justices' homes. They are going after pro-life activists. Social cohesion is shattered completely. The courts are unable to do anything. The crimes are getting worse.
I wonder if they ever were able to do anything, and if it was always just like the visage of strength and force, like the fear of threat of the cops. There's what, like 30 cops and like 700,000 people. They'll have like weird, ratios like that, like 1 cop to 700 humans. No, 1 cop can't stop 9 guys, like not realistically.
Maybe maybe that's it. Maybe they've never been able to do it, but I don't know.
Yeah, look, it's pretty scary. And I think that you actually bringing it up is smart in the sense of people understanding that there is a threat on the other side of this kind of like fictitious wall that everybody wants to cross to try and scare, whether it's you or somebody else. And I think you can see it in California, right? So I'm in Huntington Beach, which is Orange County. Up in Los Angeles, there was this huge kind of rash of all these grabbing, smash and grabs into the jewelry stores where they come in, they grab everything. And there were certain situations where people would fight back. Well, then they start to move into Orange County. Now, Orange County is notorious for being very different politically than Los Angeles, a little bit looser on the concealed carry laws. Well, what happens when they come in, they hit Huntington Beach, they go into a jeweler, which is right down the street from us. The guy has a concealed carry, pulls his gun out, shoots 3 of them. There was 4 different cars because they do these in these big groups. Well, you know what I never heard of again after that? A smash and grab in Orange County.
Yeah, very true. But you hear about them in Beverly Hills, you hear about them on Bel Air, everything like that.
Oh, yeah. They're still happening all the time.
Yeah,
they're happening up in L.A. It's just kind of an everyday thing now.
Yeah,
People now actually they have tourists that go to L.A. and they're just sitting waiting to see if they can videotape a smash and grab instead of going to. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, you'll get lucky one day. There's enough that happen.
Jordan Peterson talks about this a lot more eloquently than I could ever can, saying if you are prepared for violence, the likelihood of violence coming your way is reduced. Essentially saying if you learn self-defense, you will learn how you absolutely don't need it in many instances. A lot of the stuff out in the streets is a lot of the times when it comes to confrontation and fights, a lot of it is ego, a lot of it is just people not knowing when to walk away. But when someone comes into your house, that's another level. That's another thing to really kind of take seriously. People should always have the right to defend themselves, but also know exactly what they're doing. They should receive training, and they should take the situation very seriously because, as time goes on, I think it's only fair to say that, especially in major city areas, people are going to become more poor. A lot of them are going to become more desperate, and a lot of the major cities are going to become a lot more lawless. And the only person you could really depend on yourself for defending yourself is you.
Yeah.
No one else.
The people that want to hurt, kill violently don't care about the Constitution. They're going to get a weapon and do it. You can't stop that. The Constitution protects people from legally defending themselves. The Second Amendment, particularly, like the threat of retaliation, is what has protected the United States for 100,000 years. But the reason why people aren't dropping drones, there has been attacks on, you could argue, on the United States, 9/11 being an instance of someone attacking the United States. But it's the fact that we're all armed and ready to just snap back with nuclear weapons, with you name it, orbital strikes. People do not mess with that because they don't want to get obliterated. And it's the same with menial criminals on the street. If they know you're packing, they're not going to touch you. They're going to look for someone that's been legally muted and not able to have a weapon or something like that, or someone that's elderly or vulnerable. It's disgusting, but that's reality.
This is what I can't understand about California, right? If you're one of these ultra wealthy celebrities with stalkers living in the hills, what do they just got to hire 50 armed guards around their house all the time?
Why wouldn't you want to be armed? I never understood that personally.
Maybe the rich people are allowed to be armed. Is that it?
A lot of them are. A lot of them just have massive walls, which are
big, beautiful 30-foot walls.
Yeah, big,
true.
Big, beautiful
As
walls.
they call for open borders.
I do like big walls. I've come to really appreciate a large walled compound or walls and fences and gates around your house. I like it.
You'd love South Africa, man.
Everybody's walled in.
Oh, it's walls, it's fences, it's everything.
Is that because it's post-colonialism or something?
Crime is pretty serious there, right?
Yes, crime in South Africa is rather serious business.
And can you have guns?
Yes, and you can get guns relatively easily. But yes.
Legally protected, people can be armed in South Africa?
I don't know for sure. Probably not, but everyone has private security anyway, so.
Yeah, isn't it like there's private police basically because they're so big, the companies are so big? Yeah,
yes.
What is that like?
Basically, everyone has private security because the police force doesn't really work, or in some cases the police force works but they won't come out, or they're like, oh, it's too dangerous, or it'll be like, oh, we'll be there, but they'll be there in 40 minutes, and by that time, things have already elapsed. It's been your better interest to have weapons and have firearms and be ready to protect yourself at all costs because the SA police force is not going to be there.
They did the same thing in Detroit, I believe. I believe there's a full report of individuals just hiring private security that was armed and them doing a lot better job than police officers that, of course, are giving people tickets and generating revenue for the state or shutting down small businesses for daring to defy lockdowns.
What? How do you guys handle restaurant security? And you don't have to be specific if it's all under the, behind closed doors conversation, but what do you guys do?
Yeah, no, that's actually a great question, because restaurants are targeted pretty heavily, especially given the cash nature of restaurants, and then of course, the fact that there's so many people that actually go into the restaurants. And the reason why I say that's a risk now is because they're targeting places where there are a lot of people with handbags and jewelry, et cetera, and then they're just robbing everybody in the restaurant. So cameras, look, chefs with a ton of knives, and most of them have psychological disorders. I wouldn't want to cross that line, but.
You know what I think is kind of happening is there's a distributed denial of service in terms of crime occurring. Crimes, we see these videos of people shoveling stuff into bags at Walgreens or Target or whatever. Rampant violent crime in New York skyrocketing everywhere. It's so much crime happening at once that not a single one can actually be solved. Mm-hmm. So, if crime is at a certain level, the police are able to prosecute and arrest and stop some of it. But once it goes slightly above that level, you got 10 phone calls and they're all saying, I got to deal with this problem. And the cops are like, yeah, we can't. I mean, first of all, if the cop was going to arrest that guy, they'd have to go and testify to each of those instances in court several times. Not always. Sometimes it's like open and shut case, but it's just impossible. Like you were mentioning 30,000, 40,000 cops in New York City to 13 million people in the metro, 2.5 million in Manhattan. It's impossible to deal with.
And then if you throw in even the slightest sophistication to the crime itself, well, now you're dealing with a whole nother level. We had a team member who was a scammer. We didn't know it, total con artist, ended up ripping us off for thousands and thousands of dollars. I believed the story and wasn't going to prosecute it first. And then when we got the police involved, they were like, oh, they've done it before. Look at their background, this and that. I said, let's go after them. Then we got to stop this dead in the tracks, et cetera, et cetera. And they're like, oh, well, we're not going to do anything about it.
Right.
Like, well, how much manpower that takes and the case that we have to make and keep, as you said, go back. So even if it's, the slightest bit of sophistication where it requires more than 30 minutes or there's not a literal smoking gun, you're right, Bob.
And it's not just like minor crimes. It's not just home invasions. It's also murders. It's also men forcing themselves on women. It's also assaults in adult nature. There's horrible crimes that go unpunished, because the cops are like, well, we just can't do anything, or some cops just don't feel any initiative or have no reason to actually stop or try to prevent or trying to get any justice at all. There's no reason for them to.
I was talking to a lawyer about the swattings and about Marjorie Taylor Greene. And I said, what is the process for dealing with federal crimes? They said, of course, you contact the U.S. attorney in the area where, the crime is being committed or whatever. And I said, so we've got 14 or 15 swattings at this point. Bomb squad shut up twice. Studio's been evacuated. How do they have nothing? And not only that, but we actually have a ton of evidence. We have a ton of circumstantial evidence, statements made by potential suspects, and other stuff. I don't want to reveal too much because I don't want anyone to realize exactly what we have. And they're just like, oh yeah. They look at it and they're like, wow, that is compelling. FBI's underfunded, understaffed, and uninterested. And I'm like, okay, but they can go to Roger Stone's house at 3 a.m. or whatever, or they can do this kind of stuff where they arrest they raid the home of some lady. And was it FBI who raided the home of some lady in Alaska because they thought she was at January 6th or something?
Yep.
Yeah, they can do stuff like that. They can go after 12 agents can go after a pole rope at a garage.
Oh yeah, I remember that one.
But we can't be like, here's a stack of evidence from a private security company. We think we know who's doing it, and they're like, sorry.
In times of like. A golden age where we were in like a time of insane prosperity from 1970 to now, in the United States, where you could call the police and they'd come to your house and be like, what's wrong? Can I help you? Like, if society starts to break down in any fashion, defer to the Constitution. You have the First Amendment and the Second Amendment to back you up. You have the right to defend yourself and your property in this country.
I want to jump to this next story, but real quick, I just want to say, as of 8 p.m., news broke that Kirstie Alley has passed away.
Oh, man.
Yeah. A tweet on Kirstie Alley's page says, sad to inform that our fierce loving mother has passed away after a battle with cancer. So rest in peace. Someone super chatted, and I was kind of like, what? Because I have to just joke. And then I pulled it up. Yeah. So rest in peace. Sad to hear.
Yeah, I was going to say that I loved Look Who's Talking as a movie, but it's like, you know what, Kirstie? God bless you, my man, woman. Love you, your family, everybody out there, the Alleys, whatever your last names are. Love you guys. Sorry to hear, but beautiful human.
Well, life is short. You got to cherish every moment you have, and you got to protect it too.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.